Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Wisdom of the Soul. I'm Michael Benner, and absolutely pleased to be with you again this Sunday for uh, today's episode, which is going to be about defensiveness. And I think that you're going to find this to be really interesting and also valuable in your life. It's a topic that is not commonly discussed, and yet it's a really destructive behavior. A lot of conflict in our lives can be avoided if we can learn to be, or as we learn to be, non-defensive. But like a lot of people, it just never occurs to them. It's like, well, they attacked me, they insulted me, they were nasty. What am I supposed to do? Take it? Just sit there and suffer the abuse? I've got to stand up for myself. I've got to put them in their place. I got to set them straight. Well, this comes out of a kind of a war model. And we have talked quite a bit in the past about the fight or flight response, and that's what's getting triggered. And that brings about even more anxiety, starts that vicious circle, that vicious cycle of anxiety and stress and fear, really, uh, triggering even more stress and anxiety. So we have an alternative to being defensive, and it's not being offensive. There is such a thing as non-defensiveness, and it's an exceedingly powerful form of communication. If you want to persuade people, confronting them and telling them they're wrong is probably not the best strategy. So that's our topic for the day today. The extraordinary power of non-defensive communication. We'll have fun with this topic. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. I want to remind you that anytime you search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, you can find all kinds of wonderful things from this class on YouTube in its entirety as a video. The audio podcast is edited. We remove the meditation and the Q&A to streamline it a bit, but that's available every week wherever you get your audio podcasts. And also want to remind you, and I probably don't mention this often enough, though I'm retired, I'm still doing private one-on-one. A couple of times a week I do sessions, 2, 3 times. I think that's about my limit, maybe 3 sessions a week. But the first one's free, sort of like your heroin dealer, right? First one's free. And it's a significant commitment to do one-on-one private intensives. And so I figure you've got a right to find out what you're in for. And so all you have to do is go to michaelbenner.com and you'll see a big red circle. And you just click on that. It says free intro. That'll take you to my online calendar, and you can schedule from what's available a time that works for you. And then you get an email to confirm it and instructions on how to reach me at that time. And we'll do a phone call. If you'd like to do Zoom at that time, we can set up a quick Zoom room as well. It's up to you. But that's available, and then we'll talk more about what you think you could get for me, and I'll tell you what I think I might be able to do for you. Some people just come once. Some people stay for months and months and months. It's all up to you. But I do offer that work, that private one-on-one work. Frankly, I found it very gratifying. That's where big change really happens with I call it the FLY program. FLY, feeling like yourself. So more about that if you just go to michaelbenner.com and poke around. Have I mentioned there's a reading list as well? If you go to michaelbenner.com and click on the audio podcast button, you'll go to a page that includes not just the streaming podcast, the link to YouTube and to other podcast players, but in the banner on the top, a reading list. Pretty cool that I've put together over the years. You can check that out. It's really divided into two parts: personal development, and then a second column on spiritual development. So you might want to check that out, michaelbenner.com. All right, let's do our opening meditation. So get comfortable in your chair, sit up, feet flat on the floor unless you're sitting in a yoga cross-legged position. Close your eyes and settle in. Just center yourself and feel balanced. Create and sense a letting go feeling from head to toe. Lots of people just start meditating. Many meditation teachers just tell you to close your eyes and begin to meditate. I'd like to suggest there is a process, an induction of 1 to 3 minutes before you actually get to a meditative state. And that's where we take some slow, deep breaths, inhaling through the nose, and hold for just a moment or two. Remind yourself there's no hurry. And then exhale through the nose or the mouth, all the way out beyond where you'd normally stop. Pause for a moment. There's no hurry. Might be surprised to find that out. And then inhale again. Inhale through the nose, fill your lungs, pulling in strength and power. And exhale. If you exhale through the mouth, purse your lips a little bit to create a little back pressure. Gently force that breath out through those pursed lips, all the way out beyond where you normally stop. And do that a couple of more times. Nice, slow, deep, even breathing. And as you exhale, feel the letting go. Muscles relaxing, muscles unwinding. Then allow your body to breathe naturally and normally. But continue to soften. You can do this with a sense of scanning your body, slowly sweeping from one end to the other, looking for areas of tightness, little muscular tension. And as you discover it, drop it, let it go. Tell yourself that you're safe. Create a sense that indeed you are safe. But this is a good time and a safe place to close your eyes for just a few minutes, to sit still, to allow your mind to become more quiet and your emotional nature to become more calm. Settle in. Think of muddy water in a fishbowl, and over time, how the sediment in the water settles and falls to the bottom of the bowl. and the water becomes more and more clear as everything that is not water falls away. And so allow everything that is not peace and safety and contentment and even happiness to fall away. And you find the peace and the harmony and the ease that you've been looking for, that you've been searching for, that you've been struggling to attain, has been here all along, waiting for you to let go of everything that is not peace and joy. You can have it back later if it's important to you and you wish to pick it up. You can revisit these problems at a later time. But let's just take a few minutes to remind ourselves that the peace, the love, and the understanding we search for is with us in the core of our being, always. It never leaves you. You already have the essence of what we're looking for. Just release everything that is not that. Feel it fall away. Imagine it floating away like a helium party balloon. Imagine it vaporizing or evaporating. And say to yourself, and still I remain. I am that peace. I am that love. Elegant, graceful, beautiful. I am this understanding. I am that. Anytime you'd like to take one or two slow, deep breaths and exhale with a kind of sigh of relief, do that. And then allow your breathing to return to a normal cadence. And gently bring your attention to the bottom of your nose. Find your place, whatever spot feels most comfortable. Gently allow yourself to settle in like a little pinpoint of awareness somewhere on the tip of the nose, the septum, just inside the rim of the nostrils. Find a spot, camp out there. And identify not as the breather, but as the witness of the breath in its natural, easy coming and going. As we remind ourselves that when we let go of our identity as the doer, the one who behaves and takes action, we become the witness, the observer of a body that breathes itself. No more holding on, just let go. Be the non-attached, curious witness of this body breathing on its own. Curious, even fascinated, that it feels like your body is being breathed for you. And there's nothing you need to do but observe it. For the peace it engenders, the joy, simple happiness for no reason, and the insight and understanding that tends to rise up without logic, full-blown and expanded awareness of many things. A good place to begin is recognizing that who you are and what you're for is to witness. Simply watching your body breathe itself and the light that fills your mind and the warmth in your heart that arrives so effortlessly is participation. It is living. It's enough. There's nothing you need to fix. Right now, anyway. Nothing you need to set straight. No one to correct. No need to defend yourself. And if you reflect on times when you have felt attacked, insulted, hurt, when you found yourself becoming defensive, who exactly were you defending? And are you sure you need a defense? What if you simply did not defend yourself? What if you listened carefully, were open and receptive to insight and understanding of yourself and the world around you, but there was no need to control, to set things right, to correct? And if we do wish to influence the world, and even a single individual, are there better ways than confrontation of doing it? Are there subtler, more clever, more effective ways of influencing the world around you than opposing the way things are? Consider the way men fight in the West, how they square off like everything is a battle, a war. Each side is offensive. They throw their fists forward. Each side moving toward the other aggressively. Ask yourself, is there a better way? Is there an alternative, a way of managing or controlling the situation other than to defend yourself by counterattacking? What's the alternative? You're not going to just stand there and allow yourself to be pummeled. At least you'll try to block some of the blows, but what else could you do? And then consider the martial arts, where the martial artist will not oppose, not resist, In fact, they may grab the jacket of the offender so as to pull them in the same direction they're already moving in. They don't oppose, they don't resist. They use the momentum of the aggressor. And with a little bit of leverage, simply redirect that aggressive energy into a harmless direction. And the attacker is now on his face, on the ground, helpless. This is simply a metaphor for a rhetorical approach to arguing, better said, communicating, in a non-defensive way. You can still say what needs to be said, express yourself, and do it in a constructive way without becoming defensive, and even without triggering defensiveness in the one with whom you disagree or who disagrees with you. Remember Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest heavyweight champions ever, saying float like a butterfly, this big, massive mountain of a man. A professional boxer is paid to beat people up. And he talks about floating like a butterfly. You see? So let's vow to be more clever in our communication, seeking gently to influence and persuade without making people wrong, forcing them to lose so that you win. Let's take just a minute to sit quietly with this. Reflect on it for a minute, literally about a minute, until you hear my voice again. Wonder about this. Reflect on it. Form the intention to return to the wide awake state. Remembering where you are in the class you're in. Secondly, move to a gentle rising up feeling, the way you wake up in the morning without an alarm, just slowly awaken. And 3, eyes open, wide awake, back in the room. Eyes open now, feeling better than before. Back in the room, wide awake, feeling fine, better and better. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that. Communication is a really complex art form. There's a lot to it, which makes it difficult to generalize. But I guess the 2 parts to our topic today, dropping defensiveness, or one way of bifurcating this is to consider that I could learn to be less defensive. And I could also learn, on the other hand, not to trigger defensiveness in other people. Because then we're going to stimulate the fight or flight response. Anxiety rises, and we lose access to the whole frontal lobe and neocortex. The higher brain functions, as I'm sure you've noticed in your life, are just lost when the limbic brain is triggered. This deeply emotional area of the brain that contains the amygdala, the fight or flight mechanism, the little cluster of neurons that is responsible for, oh no, bring on the adrenaline, bring on the cortisol, and all that goes with preparing you to survive danger. Well, a discussion with your spouse or your partner, with your parents, your kids, your coworkers, you're not in real danger, but the brain doesn't know that. To the brain, this person that you love dearly and sleep with every night becomes the enemy. They're a monster. They're going to devour you. And you have to defend yourself against that monster and end up saying things, the most hurtful things to the people you care. I mean, you'd never talk to a stranger that way. But we often end up saying the meanest, nastiest, most cruel things to the people that we love the most, because by virtue of the fact that we love them, we are vulnerable, and they can hurt us because of that vulnerability more easily and more deeply than others that we don't care so much about. One of the reasons we know love is not a feeling, because it brings up so many feelings, from the sweet affinity of affection and tenderness, and a willingness to sacrifice and do whatever we can for the person, to anger and hatred and animosity. And it's all brain chemistry, don't you see? And as we become aware of this, we can subvert it. We can rise above our animal nature, our warring instincts. And I think it's fascinating, as much as we talk about gender fluidity now, just how differently men handle their anger and women handle their anger. So I want to talk a little bit here about passive aggressive, uh, offensive and defensive behavior in a passive aggressive way. Because defensiveness and hostility, attacking and counterattacking, doesn't always have to take the form of physical violence, the way a man may be more likely to express himself. Passive aggressive looks like arms folded, I'm fine. And then they look off into the distance. No, I'm fine. That's yeah, everything's cool. And you're thinking, well, no, obviously everything is not fine. And so you might say, well, you don't look fine to me. And isn't that going to trigger defensiveness in the other person? Look, I told you I'm fine. What if you said, like, well, I'm hearing you say, I mean, here's an alternative approach. Instead of, well, you don't look fine to me, you could say, well, I'm hearing you say that you're fine, but my concern is that your body language and your behavior suggests there's something else going on that I guess you don't want to talk about. And if you don't, I mean, that's your right. But if you want me to pull it out of you, I'm a little hesitant to do that. I don't want to really struggle with you or fight or have to be in a position of pulling it out of you.
Currently unmuted. You are currently on more.
I'd rather we just discuss it. I'm your friend. I'm your partner. You know, I'm your spouse and family member, whatever. I'd like to talk to you about it if you're open to
You
it.
are currently
A little distracted by that. I don't know if you guys are hearing
currently
that.
unmuted. You are Hannah. Computer audio muted. Empty video render. Beneath Haji.
I don't know what to do about that. Make sure you're all muted. Somebody's computer is talking.
I got it.
Good, thanks.
Currently unmuted. Audio submenu.
Still happening. Is that Zoom talking?
No, it's
Larry.
Larry, and it looks like he's using an audio visual program he's accidentally unmuting himself.
I keep muting him, but he keeps chiming back in. I'm not sure what to do.
Might want to put him in the waiting room while he figures it out. It's just distracting. So let's get back to passive aggressive.
Currently unmuted.
It's funny, I'm doing a class on defensiveness and anger, and how to manage being attacked, and I feel like I'm being attacked by this computer. So it's time for me to practice what I preach, I guess. You see, active listening is a way of referring to sharing your process with the other person and playing back what you've heard them say. So I hear you saying that you're fine, but here's the second part. There's a lot of evidence here that you're really not. I mean, isn't that softer and gentler and more compassionate than, well, you don't look fine to me? You hear how that would just tend to make things worse? So I hear you saying you're fine, but there's a lot of evidence here that you're really not. And if you don't want to talk about it, well, okay. But if what you want is for me to drag it out of you, I'd rather not have to play that role. Could you just share with me a little bit of what's going on? I think we could probably talk it out. There's really 4 parts to this. Whether you're initiating a conversation where there's conflict or responding to a passive aggressive statement like, I'm fine, it's okay. Don't worry about me. Arms folded, looking off to the distance. I said I'm fine, right? Or I don't want to talk about it. Okay, fine, you don't want to talk about it. The 4 steps, if I can delineate this here, is really to play back what you've heard. Secondly, to express the conflict. You say you're fine, but in fact, I can see that something is bothering you, something's upsetting you. Third, any sense of the role that you would like to play, why you care, why it matters to you. And then fourth, offering a suggestion or a conclusion or something that you could do to break the stalemate here and this tug of war, this conflict. The way I talked in the meditation about Western men squaring off and duking it out.
Currently unmuted. Currently unmuted. Zoom.
Sorry, I was trying to see if he could get back in. He clearly he has a visual impairment and he's operating a screen probably through tapping a couple times on different stuff and he keeps unmuting himself. I
think we better leave him there.
Yeah, we can remind him that he could pick this up on YouTube. Appreciate him being there, and I'm sure he can figure it out in the long run. Had not occurred to me that that might be the case. So then you have to, of course, ask yourself, is this something that I even want to pursue? Often it is best to walk away and wait for another time. You can decide it's none of your business and let it go. There's many alternatives to it, but the idea here is to discuss non-defensive alternatives to positive communication and to be influential, to be powerful. Those of you who are attracted to a class like this want to have a positive change in the world. You want to influence the world. It is a form of control, though the word control is a little harsh, a little overstated, but to persuade or to influence others or just to help people who are having a tough time, to offer a suggestion without giving advice, is all a matter of degree. And to express that you understand how somebody feels. So I want to offer at this point a relationship management tool that I think is extraordinary. And I learned this in a sales meeting as a young man. And when I first started, it just blew me away because, well, it was new. Nobody had ever taught me to approach communication in this way. And I was a communication major, college of communication, journalism, radio, TV broadcasting. But I'm talking here obviously more about interpersonal communication rather than mass media. And I remember the technique with a simple tool that's very alliterative called, or I say tool, a label that is very alliterative called feel, felt, found. Feel, felt, found is a very clever sales technique, but even if you're not a salesperson, we're all selling something, right? We're selling ourselves, or as I said, we just want to influence or persuade. Well, the standard approach that most people use most of the time is to overcome the objection, to counterpunch. No, you're wrong. Here's my thought, here's my feeling, here's my belief. And since I'm obviously right, I know I'm right. I can give you a lot of evidence that I'm right, and you see it differently, and we have some conflict, so you're obviously wrong. That's not the best way to persuade somebody that there's merit in your position by telling them or even implying that they're wrong. So what can we do? I'm sure you've argued with salespeople. Even if you want to buy a product, let's say you go to buy a car and you look at a couple of cars, go to a couple of different dealers, and you're shopping for this type of automobile. And you say, well, I like this car. I like it a lot. It's pretty much hits every check box on my list here. But there's one or two things that concern me about this car. And you express that. Maybe it doesn't really get very much mileage, or this car's a little big. I don't know if I can really park it easily. And what's the salesperson going to do? They're going to overcome the objection and say, oh, no, that's actually very good mileage. And most of your time you're going to be on the freeway, so you'll get better mileage than stop and go traffic. And this mileage on the sticker, that includes a lot of stop and go traffic, and you're going to be, whatever. Oh no, this car is easy to park. Want to take it for a drive? Take it for a test drive. What if the salesperson said, feel, felt, found, I know how you feel. Imagine, I know how you feel. What about an argument with your spouse or your partner or your kids or your parents or somebody who works for you or for whom you work or a coworker? What if the first thing out of your mouth was, I get it. I know how you feel. Maybe you could even play it back. Sounds to me like you feel, you say you're fine, but it appears to me that you really don't feel fine. I'd like to know what's going on for you. But I feel, right? I know how you feel. Feel, felt, found. I've felt that way myself. That's the first two. Feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I felt that way myself. Empathy, sympathy, compassion, high quality of understanding. Wow, there's no reason for me to be defensive. This person is not attacking me or countering my argument or conflicting in any way. They know how I feel. They gave me a little feedback, so I know they know how I feel. And they're admitting that they felt that way themselves. And then the third aspect, the influencer saying, I know how you feel. I felt that way myself. Here's what I found. Pow. Here's what I found. When I learned this as a sales technique, I took it to the radio. Where as a talk show host, I was used to arguing with people. In the 80s, really the only people I ever argued with and became vehement, I'll say it that way, were people that promoted hatred, war, or some sort of violence or bigotry. And that would get my hackles up. But it was a show, so I let it go to a certain extent because I knew people were reaching out to turn the radio up. They really like a little bit of that. But then you destroy yourself in the long run if you go too far with that. You just risk exposing yourself as a total jerk and someone who's insensitive. And what if your audience thinks, well, the other guy's actually got a pretty good point, Benner, you're being a real jerk here by not acknowledging the merit. So that's what I began to do. On the radio as a talk show host doing controversial issues. If things got too heated or they approached being too argumentative, more emotion than real clear thought, I'd say, well, I know how you feel. God, that's powerful. I mean, it's just, I know how you feel. It's just 5 words. Just 5 words. It can totally change the atmosphere. How about, I understand how you feel? Maybe that's even better than I know how you feel. I understand how you feel. I felt that way myself. Or I'll say in a talk show situation, I might say, you know, one thing we do agree on is, and I'd throw them a rhetorical bone. And they'd turn into Sally Fields. Oh, he likes me. He likes me. He really, really likes me. I'm going to win this argument. And they drop their defensiveness, and then either the situation will be resolved, or if I thought I needed to make an example out of them because it was a show, I would then eviscerate them after after their guard was down and set them straight on war, racism, sexism, whatever, hatred, violence. Those were my triggers. I know how you feel. I'll tell you another story along these lines. Sure would like your comments when we go to the Q&A in a few minutes. Questions or comments, just put them in the chat box. Melinda is our co-host today. Address them to her in the chat box. We'll go to the Q&A in a minute. As some of you know, I worked for 3 years as a contract employee, independent contractor for the Orange County, California Sheriff's Academy. I was an instructor at the Sheriff's Academy. And I did a self-awareness training called Internal Vigilance that I wrote and presented for a little over 3 years. And everybody went through this class, not just the cadets in the academy, but the veterans on the force, the sergeants, and I think it went up through sergeant. Lieutenants and higher did not do the class. They had their own executive retreats, administrator retreats, and such. But sergeants on down, whether they were veterans or just out of the academy, in the jail, street patrol. We even had people from the forensics lab, pretty much anybody who interfaced with the public took this self-awareness training. And I'll always remember this one particular day. I'm explaining relationship management and talking about the value of non-defensive communication, because, you know, here's a cop, a sheriff's deputy, the embodiment of law enforcement and authority, dealing with a criminal, if it's in a jail setting or in the public, somebody who has committed perhaps a minor violation all the way up through a violent crime, some felony. That's part of what was so interesting about working with law enforcement, is the broad variety of situations these women and men find themselves in. And I'm talking about the power of simply saying to somebody, I understand how you feel. I felt that way myself. But here's what we're going to have to do. You've got warrants, so you got to go downtown. If you turn around, put your hands behind your back. And this made these officers real uncomfortable, most of them anyway. Some heard clearly what I was saying, and we're already in the field behaving in a very courteous and sympathetic way. They found they could get better results with honey than vinegar, right? Is that how the saying goes? But as I explain this young cadet in the back row, it's always interesting to encounter the people that sit in the back row, right? They're always the most skeptical anyway. And he was in the back row in the far corner. He was barely in the room, right? And this is maybe 3 hours into it's a day-long class. It was an 8-hour class. And he raised his hand, and everything in the academy is sir, yes, sir, no, sir. And he raised his hand, and I acknowledged him, and he said, Sir, I have no desire to tell some inmate in this jail that I understand how he feels. I want him to do what I tell him to do because I tell him to do it. And I let that silence ride for about 2 long seconds and said quietly and slowly, Sir, I understand how you feel. And the whole room cracked up. Everybody, it was hilarious. Everybody cracked up. And what I loved about it was not derisive or derisive laughter. Nobody was mocking him or making fun of him. It was just the power of acknowledging to somebody that you understand them became so self-evident in that moment. And I even had to crack up because it was just one of those situations where the world stops and you almost hear trumpets going, ta-da, right? It's one of those great moments. I understand how you feel. I can tell you about a time that I felt pretty much the same way you feel. If you'd like, we can get into that later, but I really do understand you. Here's what I found. Man, isn't that so much more elegant than being defensive or putting someone else on the defensive, attacking and counterattacking? And as I said in the meditation, the bigger question here, when you feel defensive, like you have to defend yourself from some insult or an attack, ask yourself, who am I defending? Who is Michael Benner that he needs to defend himself? Why am I so insecure that I can't take a little criticism or a rebuff or immediately go to compassion for the person who is only trying to hurt me because they hurt and they want me to know how they hurt? You see, this is what happens when you meditate regularly, when you come to classes like this and read books about self-development. You become more aware. You see the game. You refuse to take the bait. You just don't buy into it. I love that Eleanor Roosevelt quote, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. No one can make you feel hurt in any way without your buy-in, without your permission, don't you see? Somebody says you're an idiot, you're a moron. You don't have two brain cells to rub together. I feel the animal impulse to say, what are you talking about? That's a horrible thing to say to me. I'm actually very smart. I'm a very stable genius. You're the stupid one. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. No, you're stupid. Well, you started it. We've had enough of this, right? We're not in grade school anymore. Maybe we can do a whole lot better. They insulted me because they're hurting. Have some compassion for their suffering. Can you be that self-aware? Yeah, of course you can. Then that totally impacts the way you respond. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry. I don't feel stupid, but you really don't have to defend anything. You don't have to respond in any way. You don't have to say, oh, you must be having a bad day. Or even risk being seen as superior, by saying something like, well, you don't play all your cards face up. You don't call them out by saying, well, you're just saying that because you're hurting. No, knowing that is enough, then let it go. Oh, I guess this isn't a good time to talk. I'm going to go make some tea. I'll talk to you later about this. Hope you feel better. You see, just don't be so combative. This is the power of non-defensive communication. There's an alternative between being the attacker or the defender, and the defender then counterattacks, so the attacker now has to attack your counterattack, which is a defense. There's really not much difference, right? Defensiveness is a counterattack, but you just don't have to play the war game at all. Say, oh, I hear that this is how you feel, but there's a conflict here. Want to talk about it? I don't want to drag it out of you here. I don't want to argue about it, but I'd like to hear what I have to say. I'd like to know more about how you feel. There's lots of different ways of handling it once we're aware. See, that's the point, is to use meditation to expand your awareness, so-called higher consciousness, so that you can see the stuff coming a mile away and understand what's going on and find better alternatives. Feel, felt, found. Try it out. Understand how you feel. I know how you feel. And play it back. If I hear you, you feel this way and this way. Now you understand, and they know you understand. I felt that way before. There was a time, I know exactly. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on for you. Here's what I found. Maybe it doesn't apply to you, but I'll tell you what I found in that situation. I'll tell you what I learned. Right? Here's what we need to do. If you're a parent talking to a kid or a boss, I understand how you feel. You're angry. I've been in that same situation. In fact, if I was you right now, I'd probably feel the same way. There's another variation. But here's what we're going to have to do, right? Because you're the boss, because you're the parent. Here's what we're going to have to do. But you don't open with, I'm your father, I'm your mother, and we're going to do it because I say so, that authority stuff. How about listening? I've had so many parents say to me in formal sessions, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. I talk and talk and talk and talk. and nothing changes. It's like they just don't listen to me, or they don't care. And I say, okay, I hear that you talk to them. That's good. It's better than not talking to them. Uh, what what do they say when you listen to them? And I often get a blank expression, like it had never occurred to the parent that they could listen. I listen and listen and listen, and nothing ever changes. I don't think I've ever heard that in 40 years of doing this personal development work. I listen and listen and listen, and nothing ever changes. So listen to the kid. Listen to your partner. Listen to them. Play it back so they feel heard and understood. It's that simple. It's really that simple. Let's go to the Q&A. Melinda?
Ignacio wanted me to phrase a question, comment for him. I just wanted to add, I thought that was a great talk. They say over 90% of communication is nonverbal, and I loved your part at the end about listening, that sometimes when I just look at someone and listen, maybe nod my head, it's pretty powerful when someone does that to me, like they are listening, like they get their say. They may not get their way, but they can have their say. A lot of people don't even get their say. They're cut off, they're argued with. It's really powerful. So thanks for all that. Here's Ignacio's comment, question. Do you think dropping defensiveness is part of subduing the ego? And he wants to hear from you directly on it.
I had a conversation with a private client this week about this very thing. The answer is yes. We were talking about fight or flight, and I had a discussion with him. Is that right? I had a discussion with him about the amygdala and the limbic brain and the fight or flight response in a previous session or two. And he said to me, I'm beginning to think the amygdala is the ego. And I said, yeah, pretty much. It is egoic to defend the ego. It's the ego we're defending. How about if I say it that way? It's the ego that believes it needs a defense. The soul, the truth of who we are, needs no defense. So it's just like that Eleanor Roosevelt quote, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. That's an interesting Freudian slip, without your dissent. No, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So somebody says you're an idiot, you have to believe there may be some merit to that in order for it to hurt you. Because if you knew you were not inferior, or the example I started giving earlier, you're a moron, you're an idiot, that can only hurt to the degree you think that may be true. If you know you're not an idiot, maybe you're not a genius, but you're certainly no idiot, and that's just not true. You're actually quite a smart person. And that's not ego talking, right? Then it doesn't hurt. So only the ego can be hurt. And the ego is that part of us that identifies with this meat puppet, the separate individual. The soul knows you're a spiritual being with a body. You're not a body with a soul. You're a soul with a body. It's all the difference in the world there. So have at it. Call me all the nasty names you want. I have the contentment and the safety of knowing that I'm a good person, smart person, kind person, loving person, and very imperfect. Also a humble person that knows he screws up, makes mistakes, will probably continue to make mistakes, but hopefully learn from them. I'm doing my best. That's all I got. So call me all the names you want. I've already got voices in my head that are trying to beat me up. They're egoic in nature. So the whole fight or flight response, the whole idea of survival is it's the ego that is trying to survive. The soul is eternal. Soul's not worried about survival. Our spiritual nature, the consciousness that we truly are, the awareness that is the truth of who we are, knows it's eternal and infinite. Call me all the names you want. That doesn't hurt because they don't apply.
2 more questions, Michael.
Sure.
Larry has something he wants to put out there, and then Hannah has her hand raised.
Okay, Larry.
Struggling with my mute button here, sorry. We've talked about this several times before, my ongoing struggle with communication with my brothers. Recently, one of my brothers contacted me with an email, and he says, "Why do you hate me?" And I said, "I don't hate you. I don't like being hurt by you when every contact with you is you're attacking me." And he's, the point of it is he wants to fix me. That he has the answer to what I need, and I'm not listening to him. Every communication we have, he tells me what I need to do to fix myself. But I'm not listening to him. And I was just wondering if you have any words of wisdom I'm going to let him be him. And if he can let me be me, maybe we can learn to get along. So how do I do that?
Well, have you expressed that to him in that way, in so many words that?
Multiple times.
What is his response to your response? What does he say?
Well, he knows what I need. He knows how to fix me.
He can't get off that.
He can't get off that. And the interesting thing is my parents had 4 children, 4 sons. 3 of them have at least a bachelor's degree. He's the one that doesn't. He has no education, but he's blessed with the idea that he knows things without having to study them. That's what he told me. So I don't know how to deal with that. I just let go until recently when he contacted me and said that, why do I hate him? Well, I don't hate him. I just don't want to be hurt anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't want to fight. I don't want to fight anymore. So, any wisdom?
Well, there's a lot there, Larry. First of all, as far as being hurt, again, I would consider that the better you know the truth of who you are, except that, like every other human being on the planet, you have struggles, you have trials. We're the only thing perfect about us is that we're perfectly imperfect. We're imperfect in ways we need to be to learn whatever we need to learn, but that we're human and we screw up, and sorry I don't live up to your standards or whatever, but it's really my responsibility. And the more you know yourself and accept the truth of who you are, the less it will hurt. Again, consider that quotation about no one can make you feel inferior. Another way of saying that is no one can hurt you without your permission. Your need for him to change reflects his need for you to change, right? if you accept him as he is, this is my brother. His intention is to fix me and change me. There are worse things than having somebody who wants to fix you and change you and help you be happier. He's just irritating you because you don't agree with him. You think he's wrong, or you've tried it, or whatever the case may be. But by accepting yourself, it's easier to accept him. And then in terms of the practical, how do you respond to that? I think all you can do is the best you can do of acknowledging, look, I understand you're trying to fix me. I understand that in your heart of hearts, you really believe if I just do what you tell me to do, that my life will be better. But, you know, I have to have some self-respect, and I do have self-respect, and I need to live in my integrity and live my life the way I think I should live my life. And so I'll accept things that you say that I think have value, but not accept things that don't fit for me or don't work for me. And if that's upsetting to you, I'm sorry, but I certainly don't hate you. Be as clear as you can in that response, and then don't go over it again and again and again. You know, like if it comes up again. Well, we talked about this, remember? I told you, I really appreciate your intention. You know, I take from you what I can, but a lot of it doesn't fit for me. There doesn't seem to be any value in me having to go over this again and again. I know it must be frustrating for you, but, you know, live and let live is sort of a universal code. All you can do, Larry, is the best you can do. And then, again, the secret to accepting him, this is the way he is, and he may not change. Well, that would model for him what acceptance looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in the last conversation we had, what was email? It wasn't voice. But
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're at the point where we could tolerate a voice contact, because he would be just yelling all the time.
More comments.
But you know, thanks. I'll just work on it some more.
Consider again what I said. It begins with accepting yourself as you are and being comfortable in your own skin with Larry. You're one of a kind. Perfect, good, could be better, whatever, like everybody else. You're a unique individual in a universe that refuses to replicate itself. You have a purpose, you have a mission, you are who you are for a reason, and you get to be in charge of working through that. And by accepting yourself more and more and more and more, it'll be easier for you to accept others who are disagreeable, and more likely that they will see you modeling that acceptance and benefit from it as well. Starts with accepting the truth of who you are. You're just fine as you are. If you want to fix, improve, enhance, then you get to do that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Who else, Mindy?
Hannah and then Hanif.
Hi, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Melinda. I have more of just like a little, I'll keep it as quick as I can. I set a 1-minute timer for myself because I have a little story that I think kind of encompasses like a range of everything we're talking about. And I have a friendship right now that is part of another friendship, and it all kind of affects each other. And this friend and I, a few months ago, mutually agreed we needed to go out and talk. And we did. And I thought we both came away very satisfied with the conversation. And then it comes out that that other person actually needs to follow up, but they're not following up and they're not wanting to hang out with me until it evolved into this thing where we were in this phone conversation and, we were each doing our part. I can tell my own house is not in order by how bothered I am by this situation if I'm ruminating and thinking about it. And it all came to a head and there's my alarm. We're hashing it out on the phone. And, I can see my part. I can see the things that I'm doing. I'm trying to force a situation, this and that. But it comes to the point where she's saying to me, you're the one that rearranged the somethings of the agreement. And she was referring to dinner plans. And I was just like, I just said, are we in litigation or something? And she said, F you, you effing C word, and hung up the phone. And when I was just like, seriously, like it was so dramatic that it didn't even touch me. I just thought, okay, you know what I mean? It was so extreme that there was no way I could take it personally. And
That's good.
all the other things, whatever with the rest of it. But it was like, at that point, I was like, okay, this is just not about me in any way, shape, or form. And, whereas I was definitely playing my part up until that point and past that point, when she did that one thing, it was so detached that it didn't even touch me. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, the only thing I would add to that, I think, as you've indicated, when it gets so extreme that you see it's irrelevant to you, you were just a bit player in that. You really no reason to take that personally, because, I mean, that's fortunate. But nevertheless, in the wake of all of that, you could consider, what can I learn about myself from that? I always try to make things about me, not in an ego or egotistical way, it's all about me, or self-centered way, it's all about me. But what can I learn about myself from that situation? How I handled it? Did I trigger it? What role did I play? What can I learn? Not in a self-critical way, but just an open-minded, open heart. How can I benefit from that? Is there a lesson in there? If, as we sometimes say, everyone is our teacher, So thanks for that. Yeah, sometimes people just bit flip. She may have hung up the phone and thought, wow, what was that about? And being too embarrassed to come back. Say la vie. And who else? Hanif?
Yeah, he wanted me to ask a question that I don't understand. It's over my pay grade. How do you stop the amygdala or amygdala from its internal
Amygdala.
The
chatter?
amygdala.
Oh, is that? Oh,
You got it.
all right then.
I didn't hear the question. How do you stop the amygdala from what?
From its internal chatter.
Oh, you the same way you manage a child after a nightmare. You put your arms around it. Him or her. I don't like calling children it. You put your arms around the child. You tell them it was just a bad dream, that they're safe now and everything's going to be okay. So, yes, the amygdala is a structure in the brain, but it manifests as feelings in the body. And you find that part of yourself, that subpersonality that is frightened, that is always on guard and thinks everybody's out to get you. And you recognize that it's afraid. and you calm them down the way you deal with other people in your life who are afraid. You try to reassure them that everything's fine, that fear's like a shadow. It's what we don't know. It's exaggerated. You know, Plato's allegory is such a rich allegory. I don't know that you can talk to other people about Plato's allegory, but for our benefit, the story is about people that have been imprisoned in a cave, and when they finally get out into the full light of day, they're so terrified by the bright colors, and they run back into the cave, into what is familiar to them, and they conflate the shadow for reality, although the shadow is greatly distorted and exaggerated. That's what fear does. And so we remind ourselves of that. And some slow, deep breathing really, really helps physiologically. Letting go of muscular tension, the first two steps of any meditation, are messages to the brain that we're safe. And, you know, at the risk of sounding really silly, I do the same thing with pain control. If let's say I burn myself on a hot pan, I will immediately sit down, close my eyes, visualize the area on my hand or my finger that I've just burned, and consider that all these little cells, these skin cells, I don't know enough about anatomy to know all that's involved. So to me, it's just sort of a concept that I know there's skin cells and there's muscle cells and maybe, you know, other, I don't know, connective tissue, tendons, I don't know, blood cells, corpuscles, bacteria and germs, everything in the affected area, I consider, has just been traumatized by the burn. And besides me developing my consciousness as a human being, I want to acknowledge the consciousness of each individual cell. We know cells are conscious. We have the research that a single cell, an amoeba, a paramecium, a slime mold, it has consciousness. It solves problems. A single cell can solve a problem, too small to see with the naked eye. It has awareness. I comfort it. I calm it. I say, hey, I know you're burned. I know you must be very frightened, but let me tell you, from my perspective, it's not that bad. It's okay. I visualize the redness fading in my mind's eye like a time-lapse movie. I feel the pain with every beat of my heart diminishing a little bit more. If there's a blister there, I imagine the blister deflating. Again, like a movie, like a time-lapse movie in my mind's eye. And a minute of that, or if it's more serious, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of that, I have found in a very real way accelerates the healing and minimizes the pain and discomfort. It works on all levels. It works with comforting other people, with calming down your own ego nature, and even with the cells in your body. Everything is conscious. There's nothing that's not conscious. We should do a show on panpsychism. It's a horrible word. You may want to Google it. It's just an atrocious word. Panpsychism. But what it means is everything that exists is a part of one mind, that every seemingly separated thing has an aspect of mentality or awareness to it. Even the elements, rocks, water, clouds, gases, the periodic table, not just the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdom, but the mineral kingdom as well, that we're all immersed in some level of conscious awareness. That's a good place to end, I think. Anything else, Mindy?
That's it.
That is it. That's almost exactly 90 minutes. So with that, we'll let you go. Hope you've enjoyed the class today. Again, if you ever want to email me, just respond to the newsletter or send me an email to awmysteryschool awmysteryschool@gmail.com. And my main website is michaelbenner.com. As always, thank you. Mahalo, Namaste, Aloha, Salam. Please unmute before you go and say hello and goodbye to everybody. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Class.
Aloha from Maui. Bye.
Thank you, Michael.
Aloha.
Hi,
Thanks
Hannah.
again, Michael.
Oh, I heard my sister in there and Maui. Wonderful. Bye, folks.